Good morning and a very warm welcome to our esteemed viewers to the current affairs program Newspaper Headlines on Advent Cable Network Television, ACNNTV. Today's edition promises to be a great one with stories making the round within and around the world. We start the show with the Guardian newspaper, and I'll take it from the lead story. It says Nigerians consume 293 billion naira electricity in 5 months. The kickers. Discos failed to remit 236.5 billion naira. CBN moves to address liquidity crisis. The story starts from the front page. It continues on page 2. We have this picture of Zamfara State Governor Bello Mutawalli presents gold bars to President Muhammadu Buhari, claiming during a meeting on the gold mission in Zamfara State at the presidential villa. This happened yesterday in Abuja. And beside that picture, COVID-19 cases in Nigeria as of yesterday. Confirmed cases, 52,800. Discharged, 39,964. While death toll, 1,007. ACF, that is the Arewa Consultative Forum Chair, Ogbe, warns not destroying self, says leaders must end senseless killings. The story starts from the front page. It continues on page 2 with more on page 24. Now below the masthead, chloroquine potent for COVID-19, says NAFDAC. See the details on page 3. AUGF queries payments, contracts, orders in reports on NDDC, MBET. The story can be found on page 4. And on that same page, like polio, we can defeat COVID-19, says Buhari. Now the last story on the Guardian newspaper. Recession likely in third quarter 2020, Minister warns. That story is on page 3. We move on to the Leadership newspaper, and I'll take it from the top. PSN, that is the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria, calls for dedicated forex allocation to pharmaceutical industry. The story starts from the front page. It continues on page 4. On page 2, SEC to remit 300 million naira for budget funding in 1 week. Now to the lead story. We will defeat COVID-19 like polio. This is coming from President Muhammadu Buhari. The kickers list 9 priority areas to improve livelihood of Nigerians. Nigeria receives certification as WHO declares Africa polio virus free. UNICEF orders congratulate Nigeria, call for increased routine immunization. 40 coronavirus herbal medicine currently undergoing review. This is coming from NAFDAC. The story can be found on page 4. Genco's demands settlement of 1 trillion naira NBET, that's the Nigerian bulk electricity trading debt, as CBN orders bank to take over electricity bills collection. The story starts from the front page. It continues on page 7. Below the picture, military kills 15 ISWAP leaders, arrest 157 illegal miners. See the details on page 10. Bottom strip stories. NAPTIP arrest his back commander, orders for selling 1-year-old child. Edo 2020, APC, PDP clash over attack in Owan East local government. President Muhammadu Buhari defers 35% import adjustment tax by 1 year. Now the last story. Zamfara governor seeks President Muhammadu Buhari's help on illegal mining. We'll move on to the Blueprint newspaper. I'll take it from the lead story. As WHO certifies Nigeria polio-free, I'm now fulfilled, Buhari declares. Louts Dangote, Bill Gates, Emeka Ofo, and others. Says like polio-19. The story starts from the front page. It continues on page 6. And the picture is that of, from left, President Muhammadu Buhari, Minister of Foreign Affairs Geoffrey Onyama, Minister of Health Dr. Osage Henare, and Executive Director, National Primary Health Care Development Agency, Dr. Faisal Shoaib, during a virtual session at the Presidential Villa Abuja, where Nigeria was declared polio-free on Tuesday by the World Health Organization. Banks to handle discourse collections, remittances to MBET and TCN. This is coming from CBN, and the story can be found on page 22. The bottom strip stories on page 5. By elections, APC rakes in 219.9 million naira from 30 aspirants. On page 24, unresolved boundary adjustment cause of Tiv Jukun crisis. This is coming from Aku Uka. The story is on page 24. With have delivered on my promise. Sadia Farouk. The story can be found on page 6. On page over 10 billion naira annual salary for 600 staffers. Find the story on page 5. Now below the masthead, NAF kills 15 ISWAP commanders in Borno. The story starts from the front page. It continues on page 6. Senate seeks forensic audit of NTA. Star Times over 200 billion naira capital flights. See the details on page 7. Now last story of Blueprint newspaper. Kerosene explosion kills 4 in Cross River. You can find the details on page 15. We move on to New Telegraph newspaper, and I'll take it from the top. Senate queries SEC over 10.3 billion naira staff wage bill. Direct audit, job court. Auditor General submits reports on NDDC, NBET to reps. Story starts from the front page. It continues on page 5. On page 3, metering. Federal government approves 35% import adjustment tax operation deferment. That story is on page 5. Below the masthead, banks borrow 2.09 trillion naira from CBN amid rising liquidity. See the details on page 18. And on page 4, Commission seeks upward review of National Assembly 125 billion naira budget. INEC, 13 parties will contest October 31st by-election. See the details on page 26. On page 5, Lagos East, PDP in dilemma as APC picks bank MD. Now to the lead story. Buhari rolls out exit plans. The kickers: education, health, economy, anti-corruption top agenda. Federal government backs global action against terrorism. Arms spread. Governor: illegal gold miners, patrons paying with weapons. See the details on page 3. Now below the picture, excitement as WHO declares Nigeria, Africa polio-free. UNICEF, Dangote loud federal government wants routine immunization. The story can be found on page 4. And last, on New Telegraph newspaper, air pollution can affect lung health of infants. See the details on page 26. We pause here to observe a short break. Newspaper headlines continue with more. Please stay tuned.
Every person who is charged with is entitled to defend himself in person or by a legal practitioner of his own choice.
Remember that an individual is entitled to remain silent.
Every citizen in Nigeria is entitled to maintain a private life.
You are approaching a military checkpoint or a police checkpoint without knowing that it is against or it offends them and subject you to a frog jump. That is wrong.
Thank you for staying tuned. If you're just joining us, it is the paper. I'll take it from the top. Federal government targets creation of 12 million jobs with National Gas Expansion Program. The kicker, Buhari names 9 key areas to improve livelihood of Nigerians. The story can be found on page 25. On page 30, Edo Assembly Saga. Court stops police, orders from arresting former speaker. The kicker, Assembly calls for arrest, prosecution of parallel House members. Now on page 2, Africa declared polio free. Below the masthead, Ondo Central to wait for 12 years before producing a governor. This is coming from Akeredolu. The story is on page 30. How to make community policing succeed from the Kwara State Governor. Story is on page 26. Reps report indict NDDC over unauthorized spending running into billions of naira. See the details on page 31. Now to the lead story. Power project. Federal government to deliver 300 megawatts to every state. Secures $6.1 billion funding. Buhari differs 35% import duty on electricity meters. It can be found on page 6. Beside the picture, IGP can't determine Amotekun structure. Afenifere replies presidency. Our story is on page 26. Airstrikes destroy terrorist hideouts. Kills cause in Borno. Ogun wanted serial killer shot dead. The story can be found on page 26. And on page 8, Makinde moves to conduct local government election. The picture is that of Matawali as he presents gold to Buhari. Below the picture, Benue government owes state pensioners 25 months. Local government pensioners 70 months. The kickers, we inherited 70 billion naira debt as gratuities. We care for senior citizens. This is coming from Benue government, and the story can be found on page 25. NUJ, Serap, IPC condemn Fani Kayode over verbal assaults on journalists. The kicker, Daily Trust alerts police. I only reprimanded him. This is coming from Fani Kayode, and the story can be found on page 31. That is the last story on Nigerian Tribune. We'll move on to Nigerian pilots, and I'll take it below the masthead. Fani Kayode's attack on Daily Trust reporter unacceptable. This is coming from NUJ, and the story can be found on page 7. Auditor General submits 6-year audit queries on NDDC, MBET to Reps Committee. The details on page 11. The lead story, 66 soldiers sue federal government. The kickers claim 1.320 billion naira for human rights violation. Say their rights to liberty, freedom violated. Lament detention despite Buhari's amnesty. Asks for order to release them immediately. The story is on page 8. And the picture is that of Delta State Governor, the Deputy Governor, Senator Lawson, Speaker of the House of Assembly, the Chief Judge, top government and People's Democratic Party officials during the swearing-in of 24 commissioners and special advisors in Government House, Yenugu. Below the picture, will define a Motekun security structure. This is coming from Presidency, and the story is on page 5. The bottom oil production cost. This is coming from Kyari, and the story can be found on page 5. On page 13, Bielsa faults federal government on insolvency status, restates call for restructuring. That story is on page 13. We are probing Chinese loan to protect Nigeria's sovereignty. Honorable Osai. The story can be found on page 7. And on page 5. Ex-CBN Deputy Governor Lafia resigns NIPSS appointment on Nigerian pilot. Pension fund total assets hit 11.09 trillion naira. See the details on page 33. We move on to the Daily Trust newspaper. I'll take it below the masthead. Governors to pay community police officers salaries. Force headquarters. That story can be found on page 5. Foreigners buy gold with arms in Zamfara. May Lafia was issued query before he resigned from NIPSS. The lead story, Fani Kayode under fire for attacking the kickers. We stand by our correspondent, Media Trust. NUJ, IPC, Amnesty International, CPJ, SERAP, others react. My encounter with ex-aviation minister. See the details on page 5. Below the picture, WHO certifies Nigeria, Africa free of polio virus. See the details on page 4. Below the masthead, the bottom stories, I beg your pardon. Buhari waives tax on imported meters. 6 million power users on queue. The detail is on page 10. And on page 6, troops kills cause of ISWAP terrorists in Borno. Last story on Daily Trust newspaper. Complete bombshell. Messi tells Barcelona he wants to leave. Right. We move to People's Daily, and I'll take it below the masthead. Kogi Guba, Governor Bello, Wada, but no fate, August 31st. The details can be found on page 2. Troops arrest 154 bandits, kill 2 in Zamfara and Katsina. The lead story, Nigeria, Africa now free of WHO declares. The story can be found on page 5. And we have the picture of the Minister of Health, the Executive Director of the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, shortly after Nigeria was declared polio-free yesterday by the World Health Organization. Now to the bottom strip stories. Airstrike kills ISWAP leaders, several fighters in Borno. See the details on page 2. Page 3. 774,000 jobs came. Reps PDP caucus. Reps PDP caucus threatens legal action against encroachment, human rights. See the details on page 3. And finally, on People's Daily newspaper, UN invests $1.5 billion annually on Nigeria's humanitarian crisis. This is coming from the coordinator, and the story can be found on page 4. All right, and that is the much we can bring to you on today's edition of Newspaper Headlines. Thank you for watching. Join us for a fresh edition on Friday. But before then, I leave you with these words. When God blesses us with many favors, we should use these as an opportunity to bless others and not to choose to enjoy it to ourselves. Blessings are meant to be shared with other people. So, on your face. God bless you and bye for now.